Live your life within the moment. And don't go wait until the morning. You never know when it is over. All that I know is we'll get older. So let us dance this night away.
And before we begin today's episode, please listen to the following public service announcement from the Honorable Judy Heumann. Judy is a former United States Assistant Secretary of Special Education and Rehabilitative Services in the Clinton administration and the former U.S. State Department Special Advisor for International Disability Rights in the Obama administration. And recently, Judy has starred in the Netflix documentary Crip Camp.
Hello, my name is Judy Heumann. I'm here today to encourage you to please take your COVID vaccine. And if you have friends and family that haven't, please encourage them also. COVID is to be taken seriously. In addition to taking the vaccine, please use other protective methods. Wear a mask, use gloves, and sanitize frequently. If you need additional information and you live in Eastern Oregon, you can contact EOCIL. Thank you, and protect yourselves and the community.
And I'd like to welcome everyone back to Voices in Action, a podcast by Eastern Oregon Center for Independent Living, a global disability resource and advocacy center. And I'm your host, Amador Perez. And over the courses of seasons 2 and 3, we're going to be covering a variety of topics related to EOCIL's core priorities, which include but isn't limited to disability crisis and emergency, HIV prevention and harm reduction services, disability two-spirit and LGBTQIA advocacy and services, and many more. And if you'd like to know about all of our other services and programs we have, I encourage everyone to check us out online at eocil.org. We will be speaking to individuals with lived experiences, leaders of global and local advocacy organizations, and people responsible for developing and implementing policies that affect our daily lives. And we're going to be learning from each other along the way. And today I have the pleasure of speaking with Angela Carter. They are a naturopathic doctor and have started many foundations and organizations and participate in so many advocacy groups that help support our community stand as one. Angela, if you could please give an introduction of who you are.
Sure. Thank you. Good morning. So yes, my name is Angela Carter. I'm a naturopathic physician. I live in Portland, Oregon. Like you said, I've been doing a bunch of stuff. Let's see what would be a good place to start. I went to medical school in Portland, Oregon at the National University of Natural Medicine, Naturopathic College. I graduated from there in 2011 and began my private practice serving my community, the queer and trans community. I am also a midwife, so it was a full spectrum family practice, everything from pre-birth to end-of-life care, and a focus on the transgender community, supporting people through their gender transitions.
Wow.
I did that for a few years and then realized, Portland doesn't have a dedicated clinic for our community. There's all these other big cities have a clinic somewhere that people can go and they know that they will get good care and people will know how to support them. And there's just nothing like that here. So in 2015, I began the work of building a nonprofit organization called the Equi Institute. Equi Institute was, for the first 4 years of operations, an interdisciplinary clinic. We provided physical health care, mental health care, body care, all different aspects of case management, and just aimed to provide the best, most culturally specific care that we could to the queer and transgender community of Portland. And then, COVID.
Yeah.
COVID hit and everything changed. And at that time, I became ill. I had Lyme disease and cat scratch fever, and then I got COVID myself in the very early days. So I had to pull back from work a little bit, but my co-founder, Katie Cox, continued on. We got some grant funding from the state to change directions with our organization and shifted to peer work. And so Equi is still providing peer support, harm reduction, and housing support to the queer and trans community in Portland and beyond. And then I guess the final piece is I spent about a year working at the Oregon Health Authority to lift up the Measure 110 program and the first part of the rollout of the program. I managed the program and got most of the grants out. And I also took a role as a board member on the Oregon Psilocybin Advisory Board to build that program and the rules. And so that brings us to today. That's my brief synopsis.
Brief synopsis. Yeah, no, that's amazing. There's so much that you covered there that I would really love to dive into because you do absolutely so much. And props to you for being able to start up a lot of those organizations like the SQM, be part of that, bringing the first, care center there in Portland, which to me that's surprising that they wouldn't have already had something similar to
Thank
that.
you.
But wow, just amazing, amazing work that you've done. So for little people who don't know, I actually found out about you through some of the trainings that you've been providing through a couple of different organizations, and one of them was in particular about it was sexual assault or how to speak to and treat people
Yes.
who experience sexual assault in the transgender community, if I'm right. And the first time I watched it, I was blown away by some of the information that you had on there. And just recently, I was going through the organization trying to find old trainings. I came up on yours again, and I remembered that I took a lot of key points away from there. So I rewatched it, and I still learned so much. It's amazing how much of this material that you just keep going back to, and you can continue to learn and build on some of your understanding, or maybe at the time you weren't quite familiar with what was going on, and coming back to it kind of opened your eyes. So I decided to reach out to you and hopefully, be able to have this conversation and not just about sexual assault, but a bit about like everything that you do from the Measure 110. Because as a harm reduction specialist here at Eastern Oregon, I work under a Measure 110 grant, so I have to provide those services here in Malheur County. I'd love to talk about what that training was actually about, how to speak to people, how to care for people who come into a clinical setting, a professional setting, and understanding that everyone has different life experiences and traumas, and even the smallest of things that we do can make a really impactful difference in someone's lives. And you might have noticed here, while I was introducing you, I made the mistake of using the improper pronoun, and that is something that I am struggling and learning to rethink, because coming up in a small town, 21 years, it was always he, him, she, her. And to be able to like reteach myself, relearn that that those were way of the past. People don't identify like that anymore. They haven't for so long. So it is courteous and respectful to actually refer to them by the proper pronouns. And that's something I'm learning. And specifically from that training that I was just referencing, you mentioned that pretty well, that if you do make a mistake, just apologize real quickly and move on. Don't dwell on the topic. And that's something that has been so beneficial for me, especially in the setting at work, where we do work with a lot of people who are part of the LGBTQI community, where I'm bound to make a mistake. I just address it real quickly and move on, and that's made such a big difference. But I mean, I honestly don't know where to start, because your list just goes on and on forever. How about we start with how do you got into like starting the Equine Center, or getting into the work that you do? Have you always been wanting to do this kind of work, or something that kind of fell into your lap? Or how did this journey for you begin with being part of all these organizations and advocacy groups?
Yeah. Well, before we go in any further, I want to throw back the thank you because you are fulfilling the work of Measure 110 and supporting people who really, really need the help. And I just appreciate you so much for what you're doing, especially in rural Oregon where there
Yeah.
are so few resources. So just thank you for your work as well. So how did I get started? I mean, I came out as a queer person when I think I was 12. I had understood, but not had the words for it most of my life. It just, wasn't something that was talked about. And I was very lucky to be in a community and have family who welcomed and accepted me. And that made a huge difference in my life. When young people come out as queer or transgender, having one adult at minimum in their life who loves them and accepts them for who they are is the, night and day between thriving and surviving. And so I'm very grateful for wonderful parents who loved me and accepted me, and a faith community that loved me and accepted me. And I was very fortunate. And so at 12, I came out, and as I got older, I recognized that there were very few other people like me who had come out and felt safe and had community. And I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, so I had a lot of resources close by, and recognized that even though it was close by, a lot of people in my age group couldn't get to them. And so I started volunteering when I was 16 for a phone hotline. It's called Lyric, the Lavender Youth Recreation and Information Center in San Francisco. It's a youth hotline. People from all over the country can call and talk to a peer, a youth peer, who has this shared experience of being queer or transgender or intersex or bisexual, whatever their identity. They're able to talk to a peer and get support from somebody who understands what it's like to walk through that experience of figuring out who you are and coming into your identity. I learned a great deal from my time there and really enjoyed supporting people, and it made it all the more clear how difficult it is, especially this is back in the 90s, but still, it's the 90s maybe are, gosh, almost 30 years away. I'm getting old, but it's still really difficult, and especially for youth in places where maybe the culture is a little more conservative around gender identity and sexual identity. And so it just made it really clear to me how much support people needed, and I wanted them to have that. I wanted them to have an experience of being appreciated and loved, and getting what they needed to survive and to thrive. And so I really, at that time, decided that that was something I wanted to focus on. And so, throughout my life, I've been volunteering with different queer and transgender organizations, trying to provide support, and went to medical school in part because I saw so many of my friends and partners struggling to get good medical care, just completely unable to get it sometimes. Or if they were able to get in to see a doctor or a nurse practitioner or a therapist, those folks really just didn't understand how to offer proper care, even if they wanted to. They just didn't have the knowledge and the information. So I went to school thinking, I'm going to learn how to do this, and I'm going to try and do a good job of taking care of my community. So while I was in school, I recognized how little information we received as students about offering care to the queer and trans community. And so we had a Queers and Allies group on our medical campus, and we made it our work to bring more knowledge to the school. We offered classes at lunch hour for people to come and learn about how to support different parts of the community. We worked on improving clinic paperwork and policies so that our community clinics would have a better chance of serving our community well. Um, and so that was definitely my focus in school, but also, recognizing, wow, there's, how do I help someone transition? That's not being taught in medical school. I graduated, and then I had to learn after medical school how to offer gender affirming hormone therapy care. And I did that in large part through volunteering at Outside In Clinic here in Portland. I had the privilege of working with a group of other volunteer providers, physicians, and nurse practitioners, and learned the protocols and the medicines that were used, and the ways that we could offer supportive care from those providers. Suzanne Scopes, Dr. Scopes, was one of the lead physicians there in that program, and really did a lot to help me learn what I needed to do to support folks. Outside In before Medicaid in Oregon covered trans-related health care, Outside In had a program that offered free or low-cost care to trans and gender diverse folks who couldn't access it because they didn't have the funds to pay for care. So we would have 2 clinics a month, and people could come in and get their hormone therapy and get a checkup and check in about other things that they needed for their health and get resources. And I did that for maybe three years, I think, two,
Oh,
3 years.
wow.
Um,
Would you say that was kind of like the biggest obstacle that you encountered, like the funding, that they didn't have funding, or did you feel like it was just they didn't care to provide that service, they were totally against that service, or just like a funding thing where they're already doing a lot, the state is just not giving them anything to work with, they want to but they can't?
yeah. So Oregon is a state that has been largely progressive in a lot of ways. In 2012, there was an insurance bulletin that was passed that required all private insurance to cover trans-related care. But prior to 2012, there was no requirement, and most insurance did not cover it. Medicaid in Oregon, OHP, didn't cover trans-related care until they started to cover a few things in 2015. They decided to cover pubertal suppression for youth first, and that began, I believe, in late 2014, early 2015. Basically, pubertal suppression is just the opportunity to pause puberty. The medication used is a gonadotrophin releasing hormone uh, inhibitor. So it just shuts off puberty, not permanently, but temporarily, so that youth and their families have time to think about what the right thing to do is and not have the impacts of their own natal puberty take over their body before they're able to make the decisions that they need to. So that coverage started, and then in 2015, OHP began offering more broad care for the full trans community, mental health, physical health, and surgeries. But for a long time, there wasn't coverage. So I think that part of it was that there just wasn't money for people
Yeah.
to, and stigma creates poverty, and a,
Oh
a
yeah.
lot of trans folks can't find work or because of stigma, and that makes it difficult to pay out of pocket for medical care. Oregon has had a lot of wonderful providers who have volunteered for decades offering care. We have had surgeons who have created practices here who offer gender affirming surgeries. So, I mean, as far as the resource, we have had many good providers in Oregon, but you know, they can't provide all of their care for free. They have to have some income, and I know a lot of them did provide pro bono care, and Outside In had the volunteer clinic, and Mercy and Wisdom had a volunteer clinic, and so there were volunteer low cost and free clinics, but there's a large community here, and it's
Yeah.
just not enough providers and not enough support. But in 2015, when Medicaid began coverage, I cannot even tell you the difference it made. There were so many people who I saw at Mercy and Wisdom where I volunteered, at Outside In where I volunteered, who just were getting by the skin of their teeth, just barely making it. And once Medicaid began covering their care, they were able to access surgeries that they had been hoping for their whole lives, and finally feel at home in their bodies. And it was such a huge, important change, and it made such a difference in so many people's lives. And when Medicaid began coverage, OHSU responded quickly, and just there was an understanding we need to create a program that will support this community. And so a big group of us here in Portland worked together to put together a trans health program. So OHSU began building their transgender health program in 2015, and Amy Pinkin, who has been the first and most long-standing employee of the Trans Health Program, was hired, I believe, in it was either late 2015 or early 2016, and took the program and lifted it off. And they have hired a number of really wonderful surgeons who have provided surgical care. They have a wonderful primary care support team that offers gender affirming care, but also, holistic care, primary care, all aspects from an understanding of all of the different aspects of needs in trans people's lives. And so, OHSU has really led a lot of the care provision in the state, and they've done a lot of work to train a lot of different providers and done a lot of advocacy. Um, and I've had the privilege to get to work with them for a number of years. I we worked A group of community members worked together to ask OHSU to build a community advisory board back just before the pandemic. And so we worked together and started the community advisory board. I got to be on that board, and I think I chaired it for maybe 2 years. Time is weird, but yeah, just bringing community input into OHSU so that they can understand the needs of the community. I really appreciate what they've done with that and all of the different programs that they've developed. And that's here in Portland in our little bubble. And there are a lot of folks in other communities who have stepped up and said, I will learn how to do this too. There are providers up and down the coast. There are a few providers in Eastern Oregon, but we definitely need more folks who are willing to learn and understand the needs of this community. And there are so many good resources out there, and if I can be of assistance to anybody in the state in learning more about how to provide supportive care, I would be so grateful.
Yeah. I know that's like a big thing here as well. We try to connect with as many people as we can, like different organizations. That way, if someone comes into our office, we know exactly where to send them.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, we don't have a lot here in rural Oregon,
yeah,
but it's better for them to know that there's a place maybe 3 hours away than going all the way to Portland, which is six,
right.
7, 8 hours
Oh,
at times.
yeah.
It makes it a little bit easier for them to make that commitment to go seek care that they need or that they deserve, or
Mhm.
that's that they're entitled to. They're entitled to this care that everyone else gets,
Right.
right? So the more that we can connect with other organizations, as small as they might be or whatever the case might be, it's we're trying our best to get us all to work as one entity to help provide the best standard of life for these people who deserve nothing less.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah. And so I'm kind of backtracking then to
Mm.
your college and education. What did you go to college for?
So I kind of piecemealed college together. My undergrad degree, sort of I started off actually in art school doing performance production, costume design, set design, that kind of stuff. And after a while, I said, this isn't quite it. I don't think this is right for me. I really like being in the background and helping to create a situation where people can do things and, create a scenario. How can I, stage management, really primary
Yeah.
care and stage management are very similar. Cue referral to optometry, cue referral to get an MRI. It's coordinating how people can get the care that they need. And so, there's similarities there, but also in just that I wanted to support people in having happy, healthy lives. I decided that medicine of some kind was going to be what I wanted to do. So I hopped around from community college to community college for a while. I went to uh, PCC. I went to Lane Community College. I went to Seattle Central Community College. I went just all over the place, getting a little bit at a time while I was working. And I think I, I think I probably went to 7 or 8 different colleges before I finally graduated. But I graduated finally from Portland State University with just a general science degree. I got my prerequisites taken care of for medical school, knowing that's what I wanted to do. And for a while, I was really torn about what kind of medicine. There's OHSU is in Portland, and I thought maybe I would do sort of the traditional medical route. And I think that my mother's breast cancer was a big factor in the decision that I made about which kind of education I would choose. She went through, chemotherapy and radiation, and it was really hard on her body. Necessary, absolutely, but it was really hard. And then after all of that, she used a lot of diet changes to support her body and botanical medicines, herbs. She used a lot of body work techniques to help her recover from her cancer process. And I saw that and I said, that's the side I want to be on. I want to be on the side that helps people rebuild and supports them while they're going through major health things. Naturopathic medicine, the basic idea is that we all have the innate ability to heal our bodies and minds in us. And
Yeah.
the medicine is there to provide the most optimal environment for people to heal in and to remove any obstacles to their healing. And, those obstacles can be on an individual level. They can be, oh, well, maybe your diabetes could be better if we took some sugar away. That's an obstacle to you recovering. Let's stop drinking soda. Or it can be on a larger scale. You cannot be you can't eat well because food stamps doesn't provide enough money to get through the month, so all you eat is ramen and turkey meatballs, and that's making your diabetes worse. And the reason you are on food stamps is because you can't get a job, and you can't get a job because of the stigma, and the stigma is there because we need to change the culture. So it can be on this individual level, but it also can be on this larger cultural scale. And the whole idea is, as physicians, we are here to remove the barriers to people being well and thriving and having the things that they need. So, again, that can be one-on-one in the clinic, but it's also work that is on a much larger scale. How do we change our culture? How do we change the laws? How do we change the way that our community interacts with each other so that people can be well?
Yeah, no, and you touched right there, like, because I saw that, and you mentioned that you're on a board by like psilocybin
Yes,
and stuff like that, which is a big part of it. I keep seeing that on the news, discussions about whether or not they should legalize it, whether it should be allowed to be prescribed, medicated, free of consumption.
right.
That's a big part of like some of the work that you've been doing. And I even saw that you had participated in a podcast as well, talking about that subject. And I know since it's a hot topic right now, I don't know if we can dive into it a little bit
Sure,
more, like
sure.
essentially you were just mentioning like the whole getting the law involved,
Hmm.
legislation, regulations about this type of stuff, and psilocybin being a really hot topic right now in the
Yes,
news, especially in Oregon. For those of the people who don't know, can you kind of explain to it real briefly what psilocybin is and kind of
of course.
what it's meant to treat, how it's supposed to help, and
Yes.
kind of the stigma around shrooms as
Hmm.
people know
Yeah.
them, or like and how they get confused with like psychedelic mushrooms and other stuff.
Hmm. Yeah. So, um, I'll start, I guess, with the legal piece. Back in uh, 20, 2020, there was, our election, and Measure 109 and 110 both passed. 109 is the Oregon psilocybin program. Basically, it made supervised, facilitated psilocybin sessions in Oregon legal. And so uh, the part of the law was that there was a board that would be assembled of community advisors who have knowledge in the field of medicine, law, mycology, all these different aspects, so that we could build this program at the Oregon Health Authority and the Public Health Division, and create rules and laws that would govern it to keep people as safe as possible. And so we spent 2 years now. We built the rules. We did a huge amount of research. Many of the people on our psilocybin advisory board are physicians and nurse practitioners, and we have a wonderful mycologist who is a professor at Oregon State University. So there's all of these people who have backgrounds in research and knowledge in fungus, in mushrooms, and
Yeah.
so we all worked together and did a rapid evidence review, it's called. And this is actually available on the Oregon Psilocybin Services website if you want to look a little more in depth at the research that's available out there. Basically, what the research has shown is that psilocybin, which is a chemical component of a mushroom, the Latin name is psilocybe. Their psilocybe is the genus, and then there are a variety of different species. In in Oregon, the only species that is currently legal for use is Psilocybe cubensis. We started off with just one to try and keep it simple. We know this species. We know this is the one that's been used primarily in the research. We understand its particular set of chemical constituents, and for at least the first couple years, let's just make it simple and just use one well-known mushroom. So Psilocybe cubensis is just a little brown mushroom that grows in a lot of different areas of Oregon. Actually, it's just native to the state, and so the chemical in psilocybe is psilocybin, and that molecule, that chemical, interacts with the human and other species as well, but human brains. It binds to certain serotonin receptors, specifically 5-HT2A. That's the one neurotransmitter receptor that it tends to grab onto and do its work on. And so it has impacts on the serotonin system in so other things that have impacts on serotonin systems are antidepressants. And so that's one of the things that psilocybin has demonstrated to be effective for is depression. It's been researched for treatment-resistant depression, and it has, in the research, very good effectiveness for lifting chronic, long-term, heavy depression, helping people recover long-term, really, with even just one treatment. It's been researched for assisting people with helping them with the anxiety and the depression of the end of their lives. Going through a process of death is scary and hard, and it has been shown to help people feel more connected to family and themselves and the universe, the spirit of the universe, whatever their particular identification of that spirit may be, and just have more ease in their passing. It's also been researched for a lot of other mental health concerns. People are looking at it for PTSD. People are looking at it to help support people who have eating disorders like anorexia. It's being looked at for supporting people who have social anxiety, who are neurodiverse, who have autism. It's also being looked at for helping people with chronic pain. There's actually some really interesting research on using psilocybin to help people with migraines, and
Oh,
also
wow.
other forms of chronic pain. So, the research, because of the war on drugs, the psilocybin was recognized and discovered early on last century, and there was a whole lot of research that happened then on how it could be helpful for people experiencing mental health concerns. And then the war on drugs came, and it shut down all of that research. And
Yeah, because I was gonna ask that.
yeah,
Why? Because you're listing off all these amazing things that it has been proven to
mhm,
help with, all the research being done. Why is it
yeah,
like why is it so such a big no-no in states? And
right,
I'm happy that right now it's being looked into in research and it's being
yeah.
allowed in a controlled environment. But why with all these benefits, kind of playing the devil advocate, why is there such a big problem with this that people are trying to like nitpick?
Stigma. It's a lot of stigma. I mean, psilocybin is largely a very safe substance. It does interact with some medications, and there are certain situations where, it might not be as safe for people to use. And we worked really hard to make clear when people will be safe and when they will not be safe. For instance, if someone is taking lithium, uh, psilocybin should not be combined with lithium because it can lower the threshold for seizures. And so it's relatively safe, but because it is a mind-altering substance, and really the war on drugs wasn't really a war on drugs, it was a war on people. And you have a group of people who are using a substance, and that substance changes the way that they think and the way that they consider the world. It is also something that maybe they are using to create ease in the trauma that they are experiencing from stigma in the culture. And if you make it illegal, that allows you to make that whole
Yeah.
group of people illegal. And I believe that the war on drugs was truly a war on people, is truly a war on people, because people, I mean, well, this is maybe a 110 discussion also, but I think that psilocybin, with a lot of other psychedelic drugs, were a part of a movement in the 60s and 70s to radically change the culture and recognize that, the culture was causing trauma, and a decision that many people made to try and change that. And I think that that was not something that certain people wanted. And
Yeah.
so they just shut everything down for the last, almost over 50 years now. The war on drugs has disallowed the use of all mind altering substances, including substances like psilocybin that are very effective for supporting people through their mental health processes. And so I'm really excited that it's moving into a renaissance and we have access again.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So kind of playing the devil's advocate right here
Yes.
then. Why then should, since we already have like antidepressant stuff like that, why not just use that instead of going to like psychedelics or going to this just playing the devil's advocate here?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people who are against psychedelics or have little information about what it does or haven't done like full research on it, why,
Yeah.
why not just use what we have now? Why not use the medication that we've been using for years?
Yeah.
With some pretty good, some pretty good research. I know everything can kind of be swayed here and there depending on where you look like, but
Hmm.
considering we've been using antidepressants for so long, why not just keep using that? We know it works for a good amount of people.
Right.
Why are we going to move to psychedelics?
Well, I think there's a lot of good reasons. One, antidepressants don't work for everybody. I mean, the research that
Mhm.
has been done has largely been on treatment resistant depression, which means that these antidepressants are not working for people. They're not helping, they're not making a difference. And so, psilocybin has shown better efficacy for those folks. Also, there's a lot of side effects to antidepressants, and you know, people don't necessarily want to have to experience all of those side effects. They have a very negative impact on people's lives, and psilocybin, you use it once, or maybe you use it a couple of times. It's something that doesn't have to be taken every single day to maintain. It can be. There are some folks who use very small doses of psilocybin on a daily basis or every other day to help just kind of stabilize their mood, and that can be really effective as well. But a lot of the time, a couple of sessions will relieve chronic depression, and people don't have to take a pill every single day experiencing side effects. It's actually, honestly, it's actually probably more cost effective. If you pay, like, from a perspective of an insurance company, if you're paying for a medication for somebody that they have to take every day of the year, 365, that adds up. That's a lot of money over time, and they have to take that medication potentially for years, maybe even decades. With psilocybin, often the experience that people have allows them to shift their perspective and also their neurochemistry. I mean, psilocybin getting into just a little bit of nitty-gritty details here, psilocybin increases the production of something called brain-derived neurotrophic factor. It is a factor that increases the growth of nerve cells in the brain, and has them make new connections with other nerves. And what we see in especially chronic depression is that we lose connections between neurons. And so, one nerve can connect with hundreds of other nerves, and all of those connections in chronic depression can get trimmed. And psilocybin actually helps to regrow those connections and creates more what's called neuroplasticity, more flexibility in thought and understanding in the brain. So it actually literally heals the brain. And so, instead of just medicating the symptoms, why not cure the disease itself? So those are a couple of reasons. I could keep rambling, but I know I can talk too much sometimes, so I'll pause.
Yeah, no, that's like amazing, amazing, and just like hearing that there's so much use from it, it's been researched, and
Mm,
that the side effects aren't as severe as some of those stuff that we're already using is absolutely amazing.
yeah,
Because I know w- like, where can people go to support this, or what do we as a community do if we want to see this actually become available to the masses,
yeah,
that way there isn't the stigma. Is there any place that we can go to, help sign a petition, help show
yeah.
advocacy and support for this? Because I know we have someone in our organization
Hmm.
who's actually taking the trainings and
That's
stuff to
wonderful.
administer psilocybin. So she is currently on that journey right now. And some of the questions I've asked you about this are coming from her, because she's the one doing the training. She's the one that's going to be administering this in the future. But
Mm,
where else can people go to help support
right.
this movement to liberate
Yeah.
these psychedelic mushrooms or these other forms of help?
Yeah. So I will say that one of the things that I am most excited about is the potential use of psilocybin to help people who are struggling with substance use. It substance use is people use substances because they're in pain. They're self-medicating. They're trying to make themselves hurt less, because sometimes they just, they don't know that they can't have access to other resources. They the resources are not helpful for them. And there have been a good number of studies now that psilocybin can be really effective in helping people shift away from substance use or reduce their substance use, and you know be more healthy, be more well. And so, that's my excited focus right now, is how can
Yeah.
we how can we support psilocybin use, supported facilitated use for people who are struggling with substance use. I'm really excited about the idea of bringing 109, the psilocybin program, and 110, the substance use decriminalization and recovery program, together in some ways. And I would love to see peers, people who are peer support, peer wellness specialists, people who are certified recovery mentors, learning how to support and facilitate psilocybin sessions so that they can bring their wonderful knowledge of recovery process and support people, and also offer them the tool of psilocybin use to help them in their recovery process.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So
And yeah,
yeah, okay, yeah.
yeah, no, I was gonna say that perfectly like bleeds into like the Measure 110 stuff,
Hmm.
the self-medicating. When I first started here, my idea of someone who uses drugs was just like, oh, they're just lazy and just want to feel high. They don't want to do anything. It was until I
Right.
started actually being out there in the streets, hearing their stories that are very
Hmm.
touching and very like uh very, very heavy on someone that they use because their parents used and they don't know any better. They saw their mom and dad use when they were sad or depressed, and that's the only way they think to cope with that. They use it
Right.
because they're homeless and they just don't want to feel anything no more. They don't want to feel the hatred that they get from people on the street. And
Yeah.
that really opened up my eyes. At first, I was totally against people who use drugs, because I just thought they know better. They're lazy. They don't want to get better. They're just doing it because they just want to get high.
Right.
Um, but that's just not the case. And being here, learning that I mean, a lot of people have to self-medicate because there is no other option for them. Everything that they try to do, there's a barrier, there's an obstacle. It could be due to their race, gender, identity, whatever it may be, their current living situation,
Hmm.
and past history. And the only way they can help themselves get through like emotional or physical pain is by self-medicating with whatever they can get a hold of.
Right.
Um, and then that's a big part of Measure 110.
Hmm.
And I'd like to know kind of how did you get, what kind of steps did you take in rolling out Measure 110, the first part? How do you get involved with that to
Hmm.
begin with?
Yeah. Well, I'll just share one thing before moving on. If
Yeah,
folks are
no.
wanting to learn more about the psilocybin program, you can look up, just Google Oregon Psilocybin Services at Oregon Health Authority, and there's a web page that has a whole lot of great information uh, explaining what are psilocybin services, how to access services, how to access training to become a facilitator for services, how to get licensed. You can read the rules that govern the program. There's actually a rules advisory committee coming up that I know that the program is recruiting community members for right now. So there's information on that there as well. You can watch the videos of us talking at each other about how to build the program. So lots of good information at the Oregon Psilocybin Services website. So if folks would like to learn more, I think that that's a great spot to go.
Okay, yeah. And I'll make sure I'll have that in the description of this as well for anyone who would like to like go check that out
Wonderful.
and make some sort of effort to help promote this. Absolutely, I'll have that listed down below.
And all of the research that we did as well is on the website. So if people want to know more about, the fine tooth comb details of how psilocybin works, they can find that on the website. But Measure 110, I mean, I started working with the psilocybin board in early 2021, I believe, if I can remember time correctly, and, began to understand working with OHA and their systems and their network and how all of that went together. And I've worked with the queer and trans community for a long time, and with stigma comes poverty and also comes pain. And a lot of folks in my patient base struggled with substance use because, you know, there's not a lot of options, especially for the
Yeah.
queer and trans community, for culturally specific support. And when you don't have support and you don't have the resources that you need, you do the best you can, and sometimes that's self-medicating. And so I had worked with a lot of folks who had struggled with substance use and tried really hard to find them the resources that they need, and really found that there was a deficit. I'm really grateful that there have been there's been a development of a lot more queer and trans culturally specific services and support, but most of it is in Portland. We have now True Colors Recovery, which is a recovery center that holds space for recovery meetings and peer work and a lot of other things for the queer and trans community. But that's in Portland. They do have some Zoom meetings so that people across the state can access meetings where they will see other people who reflect their experience, but it is still, there's just not a lot of resources. And so it's been a big part of my work to try and figure out how to get more resources for recovery for the queer and trans community. And, part of that has been offering training and education. Part of that has been, uh, just like trying to advocate for more coverage for more different services. And um, I saw the Measure 110 position at OHA, and I thought that what potentially wonderful way to, on a large scale, have an impact on creating and supporting more culturally specific services, not just for the queer and trans community, but for all marginalized communities. I know that the experience of queer and trans people in their experience of marginalization is not isolated. It is true for a lot of people who experience marginalization. The Black and African American community, the Native and Indigenous community, a lot of different communities face discrimination and a lack of resources, especially that are culturally specific and meet their actual needs. And I saw Measure 110 as a great opportunity to expand those services and that kind of care so that people could really feel seen, heard, understood, and not fear stigma, which makes people avoid care. I'm not going to go to that recovery center. They're going to treat me terribly because I am XYZ. Because I am a Black trans woman, I cannot get safe care there. So, this funding that Measure 110 provides has really offered a lot of ability for organizations across the state to expand their services and really focus them specifically on serving the people who are the most marginalized, um, who have not had historically the support and care that they need to have a relevant, safe, and supportive recovery process. And, there's so much amazing beauty that's lost because of discrimination and stigma in our community. So many amazing people who can't thrive and can't share their gifts with the world because they're being oppressed. And I thought,
Yeah,
this
absolutely.
is a great way that I could help. And so I applied for the job, and I think we had 3 interviews. It's a long
The
interview
link,
process to
yeah.
to work at the state, but they decided that they wanted me to join and be the manager of the program. I was very honored to be chosen. I got to interview with both staff from OHA and also with the Oversight and Accountability Council members, and it was a wonderful experience to get to meet all of them and hear their thoughts about how the program should work. And then they brought me on in August of 21, and I was the first official staff member hired for the program. The program began in February. The Oversight and Accountability Council began meeting in February of 21 and building the program and getting some funds out to the community, building the rules. It was a really steep process, just a lot of work to be done in a very short amount of time. And they did a really beautiful job. I'm honored that I had the opportunity to work with all of the people on the Oversight and Accountability Council. They're an incredible group of folks, and so passionate and so full of love for their communities. They gave so many hours and so much blood, sweat, and tears to make this program happen. And, I was the manager at OHA, but they did so much of the work,
Yeah,
which
no, but
is
and that measure 110 allows me to do the job that I do as a harm reduction specialist.
right.
Now that I've been here, I've helped countless people find apartments, get into rehab,
Yeah.
actually consider rehab. That's
Yeah.
the hardest step, actually taking that step
Yes.
to seek help. Um, I always approach everyone with, I'm here to know you first. If you care what I'm doing about work, I will share that information with you.
Yeah.
I'm not going to walk up and approach you and be like, hey, I'm doing this service might benefit you. Do you care? Like, no, I go in there like, hey, how are you doing? My name is this. Nice to
Hmm.
meet you. What are you guys up to? And then go from there. So many times, they don't even care to ask what I'm doing for
Right.
work when I'm doing outreach. And I'm like, that's fine. I'm gonna see them again tomorrow.
Yeah.
I'm still gonna know their name tomorrow. I'm gonna know what they did. And then from there, they come into my office saying, oh, just came to see because I heard you mention this. I was like, yeah, I
Yeah.
offer this. I'm glad you're in here. And then their friend comes in like, oh, someone came in here, told me about you. And I
Hmm.
get those referrals because I treat
Right.
them as a human being. And they
Right.
actually finally made that conscious effort to step in and ask for help, or at least, be nosy in a sense and try to figure out what the heck I'm doing there,
Yeah.
at their park or at wherever they hang out.
Yeah.
And that's like a big benefit of this measure 110.
Yes.
With that, there has been a lot of backlash. What kind of pushback have you seen from either the community or other organizations for Measure 110? Because I know it was a struggle, and there's a
Yes.
lot of people who are upset that
Yes.
this money was being spent in this certain way. What were those struggles that you had to face in when drafting this and trying to get this to, officially roll out?
Yeah. I mean, it was for the folks who got it on the ballot, it was a huge amount of work. The idea in our culture of substance use is, like you were saying earlier, these people are lazy, they don't care, they're just getting high, they don't want to achieve anything. And if you look below the surface, it's not true at all. But that's the cultural belief that's been held and perpetuated by the war on drugs for so long. Uh, and it's just not true. People are trying as hard as they can to get by, to survive, to not experience so much pain that may come from a lot of different things. I mean, can come from discrimination and stigma. It can come from loss of loved ones. It can come from poverty. It can come from so many different places. And this idea that it's a personal moral failing and that it is an isolated problem with one individual person, all of that is not true. Substance use is, I believe, a test of our culture. If we have a culture that is full of people who are using substances because they're in so much pain, that's not an individual problem. That's a problem at the cultural level. That is a culture that is creating pain that people are trying to heal from and help themselves from. And so, you know, it has perpetuated this isolationist thinking that, this is one person with a problem when actually it's a community-wide issue. And again, with recovery, that is also a community issue. Like you were saying, it's all relational, you know? You get to know that person, you get to talk to them, they get to see that you're safe and that you care about them. Recovery cannot happen in a vacuum. It
Yeah.
happens in community. We work together, we share our love for each other and our respect for each other and build trust. And once that trust is built, then people can start to think about, oh, I have a safety net here. I could find ways to be better and heal in the world with these people supporting me. People can't recover without support. And that's really, I think, what Measure 110 is all about, is wrapping people up in support, peer support, harm reduction, getting them into housing, getting them jobs so that they can feel like they have purpose and meaning in the world and have a group of friends that they work with and interact with. And, getting the heavy weight of prior arrests off their record so that they can achieve what they want, so that they can vote if they want. Having a felony means you can't vote, means you can't participate in the culture. It takes away your agency. So I think all of these things are very much relational. And so people are still, I mean, a lot of it is just fear. People are scared of, the whole thing about decriminalization has been, well, then people are just going to use drugs on the street, willy-nilly and lay around in the gutter, and our city will be ruined. And I think that instead of saying that, they should perhaps recognize that those people are using substances because they're in pain and they're our neighbors. These are
Yeah.
these are people who could, you could be that person. Something hard could happen to you. You could fall on hard times. You could end up on the street houseless. And so I think it's been hard for people to shift their perspective because of that fear. People have done things a certain way for a long time and thought about things a certain way for a long time. And it's hard to shift that perspective. And so the
Yeah.
barriers that we've run into have been a lot of fear. People wanting drugs to be recriminalized because they don't want to see people in pain on the street using substances, which makes me sad because if I see someone in pain, I want to support them. I want to help
Yeah,
them. I want
absolutely.
to give them a hand up. And,
Yeah.
I understand that it's hard to see people in pain, but we have to support our neighbors.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
I know.
go ahead.
I,
Yeah.
I I'm sorry to
No,
interrupt,
no,
but I
no.
know, like, one of the biggest things that I face being a harm reduction specialist and providing a needle exchange
Mhm.
program here is that people thought that I was enabling people to use
Right.
substances. And my response, like, because at first doing the job, and I've mentioned this on here before, that I thought that too. I'm like, when I first read the job position, I'm like, I'm gonna be giving people needles
Yeah.
to do the drugs. I'm like, why not just not give them needles so they can't do it?
Hmm.
It was until then that I learned that they're still gonna do it regardless. they're still going to
Yeah.
find a way in the world to do it, to
Yeah.
ease themselves of whatever pain,
Right.
whatever trauma they're dealing with. So what I'm doing is I'm allowing them to see another day tomorrow without
Yes.
risk of contracting STD, HIV,
Yeah.
a disease, anything. I'm letting them see tomorrow, because if I don't provide these services, they could get something that is life threatening tonight. They'll
Right.
go through the dumpsters, find some needles, they'll find
Right.
some way to inject themselves in an unsafe manner. So that's
Yeah.
always been my response now working here, is that I'm not enabling them. I'm enabling them to see tomorrow. That way,
Right.
when tomorrow, if they're ready to come into my office for help or
Yeah.
for treatment or whatever it is, they can come in and feel welcomed and know that I've been helping them. I'm not going to discriminate against them. I'm not going to think
Yes.
badly about them for whatever they're doing.
Hmm.
They'll come in and at their own pace, and when they're ready, I'll be ready to give that information off to who needs it, and find the help that they're looking for. So
Exactly.
that's always been like the thing that I come up to people who question me with is, I'm not enabling them to use drugs. I'm enabling them to see tomorrow, to see the next day, to see next week.
Hmm.
And that's always like the biggest thing and
Yeah.
the biggest barrier that I've faced here, especially with like the fentanyl crisis.
Yeah.
But yeah, and just the work that you've done with Measure 110, the rollout of it, you know, getting all this funding for us to be able to support the community when they've been looked at, thrown to the side, discriminated for whatever reason.
Hmm.
And then you touched on it, like having a felony, someone could have committed a felony 20 years ago.
Right.
They can be completely different than who they are today. They could have gone through
Absolutely.
rehabilitative services, and still that felony is a mark on the record that they cannot get rid of, that keeps them down from achieving their goals, their aspirations,
Hmm.
getting out of the situation that they're currently in.
Yeah.
So I know.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and I thank you so much. I know we're kind of running out of
Ah,
time here, because I want to keep it short and I want to be respectful of your time. Um, but I am so appreciative of everything that you've done, all the services, and I wish we had more time to go over a lot more of this stuff. It's just so much amazing work that you've done, from like the psilocybin board to the Measure 110, starting the Esquillian Institute and helping out with a lot of that, and the trainings that you provide over the various organizations that you participate in volunteering. So hopefully, if we have time, we can get together again and record a second part of our
I
conversation.
would love that.
But thank you so much for all your time, for all the hard work that you've done for our community. Is there any final message that you would like to give, whether it be where to find you, where they should go for if they need help, assistance, wherever it may be? I completely open the floor to you, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, well, let's see. So I guess, hmm, where can they find me? I guess I'll give my email address. It's just Angela Carter, N as in Nancy, D as in David, at gmail.com. You feel free to reach out if you have questions, if you are looking for resources. I'll do my best to help you find them. Look at the Oregon Psilocybin Services website. Check out the Measure 110 website. There's a list of all of the different wonderful service providers across the state who are grantees, who are doing amazing work right now to support people in their recovery. Um, I have a link tree, but I don't know. Uh-oh, I don't know. I don't know what it is. Oh, wait, here it is. Uh, it's it's Dr. Angela Carter. So it's Linktree Dr. Angela Carter. And if you look that up, that has more information about me, other podcasts I've done, trainings that I've done. I love teaching. I love supporting people in their learning process. I understand that, learning is a process and we all make mistakes in the learning process. And I love helping to support people in that process. So I would be honored if people are interested in learning more. I'd be happy to talk with folks individually or in group settings. Um, I I have a broad variety of things I can talk to folks about, psychedelic use for mental health support, recovery. I've been through my own recovery process, and I can speak to that as both a provider and as a person who is in recovery. Um, Trans and gender diverse care. Uh, I'm happy to help people find resources to learn how to offer gender affirming healthcare across the state, how to tap into resources where they're at. I want to be in community and support as much as I can. And just a shout out to all of our grantees from Measure 110. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing to save lives and help community be a better place for people to live. That's all I got. Thank you.
Yeah. No, thank you so much. And I will have everything linked down below and where to find the Measure 110 information, the psilocybin information, some of your information as well. But thank you everyone for listening in. This has been Voices in Action, a podcast by Eastern Oregon Center for Independent Living. And I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in to today's episode of Voices in Action, a podcast brought to you by Eastern Oregon Center for Independent Living. If you have any questions about any of the topics that we covered today, I encourage everyone to check us out online at www.eocil.org, or you can visit us at one of our 5 office locations located at Ontario, LeGrand, Burns, Pendleton, and the Dalles. And once again, thank you for listening to Voices in Action.
Our bodies move to the groove and the light that flickers. We get lost in the crowd, it's getting thicker. We get away from the drinks and chatter. Haven't said a word, but it doesn't matter. Feel the air.